Those toasties.
Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. With me today is Dr. Fred Cromartie, our Director of Doctoral Studies, and the newest member of our faculty, Ms. Sandy Geringer, our Director of Sports Studies. Before we get started today, I want to say happy birthday to my mom. Today is my mom's 80th birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. She's a regular watcher of the show, so I know she'll see that somewhere down the line.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Today we're going to talk about a couple things that are going on that kind of, we have a course here called Contemporary Issues in Sports, and we also have a course called Sports and Society. And we talk in those courses about how sports and society are kind of mirror images of each other, how in some cases sports mirrors society, in some cases society mirrors sports. So
there are plenty of examples that illustrate both.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples that illustrate both. I tend to think that sports is a microcosm of society, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, a couple of issues that have come up within the last month are the WNBA players wearing shirts that support both the young African Americans that were killed and the police department. I think we need to.
Let's just say they're being activists.
Yeah, they're being activists. And then the other one is, the one we're going to talk about first, is the NBA, the National Basketball Association, making a decision on July 22nd to move next year's All-Star Game festivities, which is basically a week-long production, out of Charlotte. And they're moving it out of Charlotte based on a law called House Bill 2 in the state of North Carolina. In announcing the decision, this is the statement the NBA made. While we recognize that the NBA cannot choose the law in every state, in every city, state, and country in which we do business, we do not believe we can successfully host our All-Star festivities in Charlotte in the climate created by HB 2. So, Fred, do you think the NBA made the right decision by deciding to move the All-Star game?
I think so, because again, they're taking a stance in regards to the whole premise behind House Bill 2 and what it represents. And at this particular juncture, from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, the NBA is saying, hey, there's 49 other states out there. There's a whole world out there that is far bigger than North Carolina. And yeah, we can do that. And, part of the argument comes back where people say, well, okay, great. They took a stance against North Carolina. What about taking a stance against China or countries that, manufacture shoes and all that stuff? Well, the NBA's got a contract with those people. We don't have a contract with North Carolina. None whatsoever. So I do believe that in the realm of, their responsibilities as a league and the owners in that who supported, the commissioner making that decision, they're right.
I agree. And honestly, in this day and age, it still surprises me that there are still issues that people just can't be people. And so it's a matter of showing the unity of their fans, of the players, of administration, that, that they're all, looking to make sure that, they're all equal. And so that they can go to other places.
Well, you got to be careful a little bit saying in this day and age. Remember, we are not that far removed from the civil rights legislation being enacted.
That's true. And one of the things I think has been misrepresented in the press and in the media is they keep calling this the bathroom bill.
Yeah.
And the bathroom piece of it is an incredibly small piece, and it's actually not the piece that concerned the National Basketball Association. The piece that concerned the National Basketball Association is the part of HB 2 that prohibits local governments from passing non-discrimination protections for the LGBT community. So, for example, if two people walk into a restaurant and the restaurant owner thinks they're gay, he can tell them to get the heck out.
Yes. And
there's nothing they can do about it. Same thing with hotels, taxis, and I gotta believe that the NBA would not make a decision like this unless they also thought it was going to affect them economically. And they want to be a league of inclusion. They want everybody to come to their games. Another thing that I found kind of interesting when I was researching HB 2 is it also takes away the right for people in the state of North Carolina to sue for employment discrimination based on race, religion, sex, and other categories that were formerly protected by state law. So right now, North Carolina is one of only 2 states where as an employee, you cannot sue for employment discrimination. And the other thing that I found fascinating, and it's really kind of ironic, that the thing that led to the passing of HB2 was the fact that the city of Charlotte itself had passed a non-discrimination ordinance with prohibiting discrimination in the city of Charlotte. And the state of North Carolina says, no, you can't do that. So they passed this law which prohibits all cities, counties, local municipalities in the state of North Carolina from passing a non-discrimination law. So what do we think the effect will be of the NBA pulling the All-Star game out of Charlotte?
The NBA is just the impetus of other major corporations that are saying enough's enough. We're not going to tolerate it. And I know that the governor of North Carolina has come back and say, oh, this is a bunch of BS. They're just trying to stick their nose where their nose doesn't belong and all this good stuff. Well, no, it's not. These people are finally saying, look, you're out there on the public record. You believe in being able to discriminate against people, period, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever, because you have aggressively enacted this legislation and put this into law. We're not going to tolerate it. And that's their way of saying, wait a minute, we're not going to go after you and march on the Capitol steps or anything like that. We're going to hit you economically. And that's exactly what they're doing.
It is. It's interesting because I was reading an article that's saying that it's basically the religious pressures, the religious groups and national groups that are kind of pushing towards this law being, enacted. But it's not only the NBA, but it's also the NCAA had two of the basketball championships for 2017, 2018 scheduled. The CIA is looking at, they've had their tournament since 2006 in North Carolina. So they're looking at how, things, if the law is going to be repealed or they'll revisit that they might be taking their tournament out of North Carolina as well. And like you said, the companies, PayPal was going to move to the Charlotte area, and that's 400 jobs that is no longer going to be going there. And actually, I found a stat that said the state could lose 53,000 jobs and 2.4 billion wages. So that's all that tax money that's going to be missing from the state line as well.
Yeah, and the number I saw on just the All-Star game itself, the economic impact was $100 million. And you're right. And there's probably going to be a lot. Bruce Springsteen canceled a concert there.
Maroon 5.
Yeah, Cirque du Soleil.
But see, the real impact is going to be our individual programs going to start to take a stance themselves. University of Albany was supposed to play Duke. They're not going to play them now. Are we going to see this trickle down? Our NBA team's going to say against Charlotte, hey, we're scheduled to play you. We'll play you, but we're not going to play you in North Carolina. And is that going to be further down the line? Is that going to happen in North Carolina, the university itself, where teams are going to say, we want no part of this? Because remember, North Carolina should learn from South Carolina. Remember when they had the Confederate flag flying above the State House, and they said, we're not going to let the College World Series regionals play there and all this other stuff. So it's already been impacted in that region, but yet we don't learn. How short memories exist, and we don't really learn from things. So this is going to impact them and impact them dramatically.
The interesting thing is, and Sandy made a great point about the religious right, but there are a lot of people that would normally be classified on the religious right who are against this bill in the state of North Carolina.
Right, sure.
And the reactions have been pretty predictable. Dr. Cromartie mentioned earlier the governor said there was an expletive in there before BS.
Yeah.
He said it was expletive BS. The LGBT community has hailed it as a watershed moment in history. Maybe a turning point in that. And I think Chris Paul summed up the NBA players' reaction when he said some things are just bigger than the game. It'll be interesting to see. The NBA gave North Carolina, gave them an out. They basically gave them 2 years to get their stuff together, and they said, if changes are made, we'll come back to you in 2019. But we'll see how that goes. I think the 2018 game has already been assigned. The other issue that's kind of been all over ESPN and CNN and the other sports related things in the last couple of weeks has been the deal with the T-shirts and the WNBA players. It started out when one of the teams wore T-shirts, and on the back it said hashtag Black Lives Matter, and it said hashtag Dallas 5.
Liberty.
So what they were doing was they were paying tribute to the young man in Minnesota and the young man in Baton Rouge, the young black men who were killed for no apparent reason by white officers. And they also went, to the 5 folks in Dallas, 5 police officers in Dallas that were killed for absolutely no reason.
Well, so, let me correct you there. You shouldn't just say white officers, because it wasn't just white officers. It turns out that the officer in Minnesota happened to be of Hispanic descent.
Okay.
So that police officers, let's just say that.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that's really important, and I can't take credit for this because I saw a lady say it on TV the other night. Nobody who's ever said Black Lives Matter has not made that exclusive. They've never said, but none of the others do. They're just saying, in addition to everything, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, White Lives Matter. They've never said Black lives are the only ones that matter. They just said that they do matter. But what the NBA players did, they wore those shirts, and the NBA fined each team. WNBA fined each team $5,000 and each player $500 for wearing the T-shirts. And here's a quote when the fines were announced from WNBA President Lisa Borders. She said, "We are proud of WNBA players' engagement and passionate advocacy for nonviolent solutions to difficult social issues, but expect them to comply with the league's uniform guidelines." The only problem with that statement is, after the tragedy in Orlando, the WNBA league office itself sent T-shirts to every team, and the players wore them before the game in support of the 50 folks that got killed in Orlando. And the WNBA office didn't seem to have any problem with the uniform guidelines.
Well, again, being an activist, we as individuals get to pick and choose who we want to advocate for. So in that particular instance with Orlando, those 49 people that lost their lives, the league itself decided that they were going to be activists on behalf of that issue. So the thing of it is that the players have a right to do that too. And they also have to stay in line with what the league stated. But the league itself is the one who set the precedent for them to say, hey, wait a minute, if they're going to advocate for this and we all have to fall in line, then we can advocate for this. And the players never thought that the league itself was going to come back and fine them and say that it was wrong or anything like that. But after everything, the dust sort of settled in that, the league sort of realized kind of the mistake that they were making, and they backtracked on that, because not only are they advocates for that, but the league itself contracts with other entities, the Cancer Society and other, advocacy sort of groups in that, and they do their own thing throughout the year, breast cancer awareness and stuff like that.
Pink uniforms.
Yeah, and the players are saying, wait a minute, we got to do that. Why can't we have a stance that was, in their minds, important to them?
And Liberty Guard Tanisha Wright, that's a perfect line, lead into her quote. She said, she's talking about the Orlando thing. She said, we were okay with that. We wanted to support that, but also they, being the league, can't pick and choose what initiatives to support and what not to support just because it doesn't push their agenda. So she was saying exactly the same thing you said.
Here's the thing, though. It's all about organizations not learning from each other, because it's the same thing with the NBA and LeBron wearing the I Can't Breathe T-shirt. And so Commissioner Silver says, I appreciate the fact that everyone has their thoughts on that, but, in line with the uniform rule, we need to abide by that kind of thing. That was straight and simple, no fines, that was that. So the thing about it is that now the WNBA, after multiple games that the women were wearing these shirts, there was nothing. It was kind of like, the Lynx wore them for 4 games and Indiana wore them for, so many games, whatever. And then the ruling came out. So, and then it's like the uniform fines are usually like $200, but for these fines, it was $500 plus the team fine of $5,000. So there's a discrepancy in the fine of why these women were, issued a higher fine than the other. So it's just kind of a different, so where are all these, discrepancies coming from? And, and then somebody called it like, is it a double standard kind of thing because the men are doing it one way and then the women try to do it? So, you know, there's just a whole bunch of different kinds of things.
Let's look at this from a broader perspective. That's not, you know, we're narrowing in on this activism from the player's perspective. Let's take a look at it from the league and the owner's perspective. It's not like they're not engaged in politics, because the bottom line is we all know that all of the leagues are engaged when it comes time for them for stadium building, renovation, and development. So let's not sit here and put all the blame on the athletes and say, oh no, they can't do that. Who puts the taxpayers on the hook for millions and millions of dollars for their own luxury stadiums? The owners do, the leagues do. So, you know, that's their form of political activism.
I don't think anybody's blaming the players. I think for the most part, everybody's been very supportive of the players. But the players themselves took an interesting approach in protesting the fines. They didn't make a big deal about it. They didn't walk out or anything. What they did was they decided in post-game interviews they wouldn't talk about the game. The only thing they would talk about was the issue. And that lasted for and everybody, even the teams that weren't fined.
And they didn't even have skills when they weren't going to talk about it.
Even the teams who weren't fined jumped in and supported that and said, nope, won't talk about the game, let's talk about the issue. You know, one of the things that happened last week was that the Lisa Borders, the commissioner of the WNBA, rescinded the fines and said that, you know, they've been in constant dialogue, they're talking. You know, basically they're not playing back. The WNBA is not playing for a month.
Yeah,
because of the Olympics, and they've got the WNBA's got players playing for many different countries in the Olympics. They got Canadians, South Americans, of course, Australians, of course, a big group of USA players, Europeans. But you know what their position was. We'll use this month. We'll work with the players' union. We'll work with the players, and we'll try to come out with a logical solution that not only lets our players advocate, but also does it within a framework that's supportive of everybody. I think one of the things that's been fascinating about all this is for years and years and years, Dr. Cromartie and I, much longer than Sandy and Sarah, but we've heard all the complaints about players not being active in social issues and not taking advantage of their position in the public eye to promote these kinds of things. And then when they start doing it, everybody complains about that too, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon. And one of the players that took the most heat during his career was Michael Jordan, who just happens to be the owner of the Charlotte Hornets, who's going to take a financial hit by the All-Star game being moved. But he finally came out yesterday and made a statement. One of the famous quotes from Michael Jordan was somebody asked him a political question of why he was doing something, and he said Republicans buy
shoes too.
Republicans buy shoes too. So you know he's always taken a very apolitical stance, but this time he came out with a very powerful statement. And not only did he come out with a very powerful statement, he put his money where his mouth was. He donated $1 million each to two different organizations that he thought would be able to play a large part in resolving this issue. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. And Sarah's given us the sign back there that we're running short on time. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what the WNBA does when they come back from the All-Star break. What kind of a solution they come up with to this issue. It'll be interesting to see if the city of Charlotte takes advantage of the opportunity to have the All-Star game come back to them in 2019 by making the necessary changes. You know, Mike Pence, who is now the Democratic candidate on the Republican Party. Republican candidate for the election. You know, they had a similar situation in Indiana, and they estimate that the state of Indiana lost about $80 million in conventions and stuff. But he stepped in as quickly as he could and basically stuck his thumb in the hole in the dike and was able to make the necessary changes to their law that the governor of North Carolina has absolutely refused to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. One of the things that we want to talk about next week is we're going to go to the Olympics, which is another issue that really ties society and sports together. You know, that part of the premise of the Olympics coming about in the first place back in 1896 with Pierre de Coubertin was that the Olympics would bring nations together through sports. And we're seeing all kinds of stuff going on right now. We hope the Olympics go off smoothly. What we'll do next week is we'll have kind of an Olympic preview as the opening ceremony next Wednesday will be the 3rd, and the opening ceremonies are on the 5th. And we're, Sarah, our wonderful producers, endeavoring right now to see if we can get somebody to call in who is either a current or former Olympian, and that'll make our show even better next week. Anyway, we decided today to talk about a couple of social issues instead of just talking about the fun side of sports, because we think that's very important too. And we hope everybody has a great week in sports, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time for another edition of Sports Talk. Have a great week, everybody.